Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah is chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. The committee has oversight over more than 50% of the U.S. budget, as well as issues like tax reform and health care. And he joins us now to talk specifically about tax reform, because that's where we're headed. I want to read a quote to you.
Sure.
2014, you said when you were ranking member of the committee, quote, "I don't want to tax the truly poor, those who would help themselves if they could. We're going to have to find a better way, broadening the base of the tax system." And now we have a proposal from the administration which is designed to lower income tax rates and broaden the base.
Right.
Are you convinced that what the administration is proposing will work?
I am convinced that it will work. I think we've got to work on it, though, to get it done. Whether we can get our Democrat friends to go along is going to be another thing. And because there's such a close relationship, 52 Republicans, 48 Democrats, it's almost impossible to do this without Democrat support. And thus far, I haven't had a lot of interest coming from our colleagues on the other side. But they usually work with me, so we'll see what happens.
Can you convince Democrats like Chuck Schumer, who has said eliminating deductions for state and local taxes is a non-starter? He said that, by the way, in 1986,
right,
when it was Democrats. It was Rostenkowski in the House who wanted to eliminate the deductions.
Right.
Can you get Schumer to the table if eliminating deductions is going to be part of the tax reform package?
Well, I don't know. I think that would be a good choice for him to make, to be against the bill if he wanted to, because that's something that most people were afraid of losing. On the other hand, if they knew that their rates were going to come down, that they were going to have a much better tax bill, I think they'd be open to really doing it the right way.
Where do you stand on that proposal to eliminate deductions for state and local taxes?
I have a rough time doing that. I'm not sure I want to do that. But I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at the overall thrust of our tax approach. And if the overall thrust means actually more savings and investment and pro-job growth and so forth, then yeah, I'm open to it.
You've also said that the tax reform bill doesn't necessarily have to be revenue neutral. Doesn't that contradict your stance for the last 40 years you've been in Congress and the Senate as a fiscal conservative who believes in balanced budgets?
Well, it does, but when I say that, I mean, it doesn't have to be revenue neutral in the immediate year or few years, but it has to be. Nobody wants to go into debt further, but it would have to even out and gradually get to revenue neutral. I'm convinced that we've got to do what has to be done here to get this country moving again and to have the growth in this country that we need to be able to have jobs for, the millions of people who currently aren't going to have jobs if we don't get this country on the ball.
Well, one way the administration wants to do that is lowering the corporate tax rate to 15%. Is that an opening salvo for a negotiation, or is that legitimate? Because even you in 2014 said you can't very well balance the budget that way.
Well, corporate tax rates are not going to change and balance the budget, but they can certainly help. And yeah, it'd be wonderful to get if we could get them down to 15%. Now, I think the president has probably come off of that particular figure recently, but I'd like to get them down. If we could get them down to 25% or 20%, this country would turn around, I think, overnight. The fact is, there's such a desire on the part of most Democrats to tax more and load more on the tops of the so-called rich, but that actually the rich, if we taxed them every dime that they make, they wouldn't do what has to be done for this budget. So we have to do this in a sensible way, and I would like to see the middle class, which is the biggest group of people in our society that really makes the difference in tax reform, that they be given some breaks.
But you want to see, I just want to make sure I understand, a corporate tax rate somewhere between 20 and 25%.
Yeah, I'd like to see that corporate tax rate down. Hey, if we could get it to 15%, like the president has said, it would be very beneficial to our country. In fact, I've even come up with an approach that would only have one corporate tax rate instead of the two that we currently have. And that's being looked at by a lot of people, so we'll see what happens.
Well, let me ask you, because in 2015, your committee issued the Comprehensive Tax Reform and Budget paper, and what they determined was that the top 10% of income earners in the United States pay roughly 68% of federal income taxes.
See, that's what's not known by the people, is that the top 10% are paying the bulk of taxes. And really, if you get up to the top 25%, you got almost everything. the bottom 4% pay very little in taxes. In fact, hardly anything. So, these are things that are misconceptions that people have, that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And the fact is that may be, but it isn't because the rich aren't paying heavily in the tax field.
But if you cut taxes for the top 10%, how do we pay for it?
Well, I don't think we're going to cut taxes for the top 10%, but we are going to try and cut taxes for many of those who are less than the top 10% and who are really the ones who are doing the jobs and creating the jobs and the opportunities in this society. We'll have to look at everything, and we are looking at everything currently, and we're going to have some support from our Democrat colleagues in order to do this, and it's in their best interests to work with us as well. And my Democrat friends on the committee know that they can work with me. They've seen me pass bill after bill after bill over these last 41 years and do it in a bipartisan way, everything from Ted Kennedy right on through to the current ranking member on the Finance Committee, Senator Wyden. And I'm open to that, but I'm not open to stupid approaches.
But politically, would the Democrats, and if there's a Democrat who you could name who's actually talking to you about tax reform, that would be terrific if you could share the name with us. But are the Democrats willing to stake their political reputations to do what might be best for the country with this tax reform?
Well, they're not doing it very well for the country now. Their whole approach towards taxes has been moving towards socialism. And I don't think that's a good move for the country. But I think there still are some Democrats, some very good Democrats, who understand that and don't want to go to a socialized economy and would like to have an economy that is a pro-growth economy, and who realize that cutting tax rates actually helps growth in many, many ways.
Well, the Democrats, though, would say it doesn't. And then they would point to the 1981 tax rate cuts and the fact that the economy didn't start to grow for a couple of years after that.
Yeah, but it grew. It did grow. In other words, the 86 tax bill, they badmouthed that all the way through, except it really proved to be very beneficial for the country, except in the area of real estate. But other than that, it was a tremendous change that helped sweep this country forward. And I have no doubt in my mind, if we'd cut tax rates and get spending under control in this country would take off like mad.
But the key to the 86 tax reform is something that's being proposed now, eliminating, I guess, Congress calls them tax expenditures, the rest of us call them deductions, especially the corporate deductions. That's on the table now, and you're in favor of that?
All of the deductions are on the table, and I'm in favor of getting rid of those that aren't essential. And that we can get rid of. There's some, no matter what you do, you're not going to get rid of them. But take deductions for giving to churches and religion and so forth. They're not going to go, and they shouldn't go. We want to encourage that type of thing, and they're significant in this country. But there are a lot of others that can. Now, state and local deductions, many people feel that we would be better off if we got rid of those, if we also pulled the rest of the tax code into a better shape.
Like interest deductions?
Yeah. Some people think that would be a tremendous move in the right direction.
What do you think?
On both sides. I can see it in one way, and I can see it the other way, too. I mean, these are tough issues. There's nothing easy about tax reform. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get this country back on its feet and to encourage businesses to come back to America. Why should corporate businesses come to America and pay a 35% tax rate plus another corporate tax rate from the states as well over 40%, when they can be in Ireland at 12.5%? I mean, it doesn't take a wizard to figure that out. The fact of the matter is that if we reduced our corporate tax rates down to 20 to 25%, there isn't a company that's going to leave our shores at that rate. Now, we have companies that have left and are now lodging themselves in Ireland and in other places which have low tax rates, including England at 21%. It doesn't take a seer to realize that our tax rates are so doggone high in this country that we stifle incentives.
But the key to that 20 to 25% corporate rate is also eliminating some of the deductions. Secretary Mnuchin has talked about that the real tax rate that a lot of corporations pay is much less, and that this would actually be a tax increase for some corporations. But individuals, say in New York or California or Illinois, what do you say to the middle-class person who might lose those state and local tax deductions? What do you say to them about why this is best for them?
Well, I'm open to looking at all of these particular areas to tax, but I think they won't say very much if we got their other rates down to the point where they're not really losing, they're gaining, and I think we have to handle this very well, and I think the administration has a pretty good attitude about how to do it, but. Let's face it, we're an overtaxed society, and companies are leaving our society who don't want to because we do tax too much. And in the end, we're doing it stupidly, where we could cut tax rates and probably get more revenues in the end.
The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee is pushing the border adjustment tax, and that actually seems to be a stalemate. You actually said 80% of the work on tax reform is done. It's the 20%. That is very difficult,
right.
And that's the BAT. He won't give up on that. He says that's necessary to pay for tax reform, and you've not publicly come out in favor or against the BAT. Are you willing to do that now?
Well, he won't give up on that. He's very convinced that that's something they just have to do. They're going to have to show me how it does not violate international norms, and how it really will work, and how it's not just another way of taxing people, and how it will not raise retail sales and rates and everything in this country, so that the middle class is hurt really badly, and the poor especially. I mean, these are all issues that have to be raised, and if they can show me how all these problems can be resolved, yeah, I'm open to any kind of tax change that might help us to go forward. But I have a rough time seeing how this does not violate international tax norms that we've agreed to. I have a rough time seeing how this is not going to just hit our retail sales in this country in ways that I don't think they should be hit. And I've talked to people, great business people on both sides of that issue. And it's easy to see why some are for that and why an awful lot of others are against it. So I think those issues have to be resolved before we can go down that route. It
sounds to me as you're not convinced that a BAT is the way to go, especially because it would be regressive against middle class and lower income folk.
I think that's an understatement. I'm not convinced at all. I don't want to find fault, because my friends on the other side in the Ways and Means Committee, that's a tough committee. That's where money bills have to originate under our Constitution. And in particular, Paul Ryan and the current chairman are both great people, great friends. I work with them extensively, and I'd be the last person to try and make their jobs more difficult. But they have to answer some of these questions before we can move ahead, it seems to me.
I don't mean this disrespectfully, but what have you all, you meet almost weekly, or your committees meet weekly, the staff.
Yeah.
Paul Ryan, Chairman Brady, Mnuchin from Treasury, Gary Cohn from NEC. On these issues, have they not been trying to convince you that the BAT is the way to go, or have they just failed in doing that?
We meet better than weekly. I mean, we're meeting almost every day, staff and principals. I think that Cohn and Mnuchin are both looking at these things. I don't think they're very enthusiastic about that approach that the House would like. I'm not either. They'd have to really show me how that's going to work, where I presently don't see a way it's going to work.
I want to, before we run out of time, ask you about health care, because
Sure.
You actually referred to the health care bill that Mitch McConnell shared with us details last week. Is not perfect, but it's a start. Do you think this will survive this week and be passed by the Senate?
Well, I'd prefer anything other than socialized medicine. If we go that route, pretty soon health care will be almost every dime of the federal government. And I've got to tell you, people were demanding more and more and more and more. That's just the way it is. And if we go to socialized medicine, we deserve what we get. And we're almost there. If we don't win on this issue in the United States Senate, that's where we're headed. And I don't want to see that happen, because once you get there, you cannot get out of it. And you can see, once they said that we're going to allow young people to be on their parents' insurance till age 26 and a couple other features that they've talked about, it's caused the costs in healthcare to skyrocket. And in all honesty, we got to get real about it, because we've got a lot of things that the federal government has to do besides healthcare. And if we go that route, that's the only thing the federal government's going to be basically doing.
But passing this Senate bill, you have to convince fiscal conservatives that covering pre-existing conditions won't raise prices, and conservatives believe it will. And then you've got to convince the moderates that capping Medicaid and shrinking that expansion is the right way to go. How does this pass in the Senate?
Well, I'd have to look at the conservatives and say, oh, you want socialized medicine? Because that's what you're going to get, unless you work with us and try and find some way around it. And same thing with moderates. The fact is, nobody with brains, in my opinion, except socialists, wants socialized medicine. They know that it never ends. The demands never end. Everything becomes more costly. There's not the incentives to be in the medical profession. There are so many things wrong with socialized medicine, and we should pick up an awful lot of understanding of that by looking at those places where socialized medicine is the rule. Even England went away from socialized medicine after a while, and they have a halfway decent system over there right now, but they're at a 21% rate right now, where we're 35% up.
Last question on health care. You've been critical in the past about using reconciliation to pass legislative agendas, and perhaps the justification for reconciliation with health care is to right the wrong. But does that bill pass in the Senate this week?
I don't know. To be honest with you, there are 5 senators who, on the Republican side, who think they have a better way of going. Those 5 are going to be responsible for socialized medicine if that's what happens, because they'll be the reason that we haven't been able to stop it. On the other hand, do they have some good points? Yes. There are people that we ought to listen to and try to accommodate and resolve their problems if we can. But sometimes the real duty around here is finding the art of the doable. It's very, very difficult, because doing perfect things around here, I found, are almost impossible to do. So you do the art of the doable, and I've spent a lifetime here making sure that we do what can be done, and make the points that we can do better, but sure as heck do what can be done rather than just cave into the socialist attitudes of some of the Democrats.
But what I hear you saying is that it's not a done deal that this passes the Senate this week.
Well, I don't think it will be either. It'll never be a done deal. As long as people, believe that the federal government is the last answer to everything, as long as they believe that the government should do everything for everybody, as long as they believe that they're not getting a square deal from the government, those thoughts are going to go on and on. We have to try and even all these things up and do the best we can to make sure people are treated fairly. But there's a way of doing it within the free market system that does work compared to going to socialism, which, in my opinion, really does not work. It just leads to more and more problems than you have right now.
And now the last 2 questions, I promise your staff.
You're fine.
With tax reform, does it pass in the fall, whatever form the bill has? Do we have truly comprehensive tax reform, or do we just get a bunch of tax cuts?
Well, that's going to be very difficult. We're 52 Republicans, 48 Democrats. The Democrats have not been willing to vote with us on almost anything. Most votes have been 52 to 48 or 50 to 49, 48, whatever it is. We're not getting a lot of help from our Democrat colleagues. Now, they know that they can deal with Orrin Hatch. I'm one of the few people in history, in fact, maybe the only one in history, who has chaired 3 major committees with 3 major Democrat partners, Ted Kennedy being maybe a prime example, and have been able to make things work for both sides, and yet make them work better than they would have worked had we not worked together. So they've got to ignore that, and if they do, then they're just playing politics and really don't care. They really don't really want to solve these problems.
You missed Ted Kennedy. Do you have a counterpart like him on the other side of the aisle? Is Mr. Wyden that?
I'll put it this way. Kennedy was kind of a law unto himself because he was the leading Democrat. He controlled almost all the major outside Democrat political groups, and it was, if he said he was going to do something, and it took him a while to get used to me, but gradually found out I not only lived up to my word, but I was tough as nails, and you couldn't just roll right over me. And he got so that he would compromise, and he would work with me. And we passed some of the most important bills in history. In fact, an awful lot of very important bills in history. And it couldn't have happened without him. It couldn't have happened without me. Two fellows who were willing to put aside, some of their disgruntlements and work in the best interests of the country. We've got to get back to that and do that here. We don't have a Ted Kennedy on the Democrat side right now that I can point to. Senator Wyden's a good guy to work with. He's a fine fellow, but he doesn't carry the weight that Ted Kennedy did. Kennedy controlled the unions. He controlled the feminists. You name it. Every one of the major bloc Democrat groups would do whatever he decided to do. And so I could talk him into coming across the center line into the center right, which all of our bills were, and he got a big kick out of it because he got all the credit, I got all the blame. Conservatives couldn't understand why I'd have anything to do with him, but some of the most important legislation in existence today is the Hatch-Kennedy legislation.
But without that kind of partner on the other side, Republicans are still willing, you're still willing to do tax reform
That's
without
right.
Democrat input.
That's right. I wish we had even a couple Democrats on the other side who would be that willing to work with us and to get things done. Now, I find Senator Wyden to be a pleasure to work with, and some of the other Democrats on the Finance Committee as well. But they're pretty well governed by their leader in the Democratic Party. And right now, I don't think the leadership of the Democratic Party really wants to work with Republicans. I think they think, well, first of all, they're bitter that they lost this last election. They didn't think for a minute that they would lose to Donald Trump. And when they lost that, it was a tremendously hurtful thing to them. And I understand that. On the other hand, they did lose, and they should be willing to work in the best interest of the country, especially when they have people like me who are willing to do so. And I think they'll gradually get off that kick. But right now, it's very difficult. If you notice, most of the votes are 52-48.
Well, it sounds like the tax reform vote might be that.
I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm hopeful that we will make some headway on the Finance Committee and that we'll make some headway among some of the other Democrats as well. I've got to sell the Republicans on tax reform, too, and I think that'll be an easier job. But the fact is, it would be wonderful if both parties would work in the best interest of the country and do what really is the art of the doable under the circumstances. I think people in this country would all shout hallelujah.
Easier to sell tax reform, though, to fellow Republicans without a bat, isn't it?
Well, I think so. I think that the bat is a whole group of very interesting ideas. I'm not ignoring them. I'm looking into them, seeing what we can do, what we cannot do. But we still have international norms we have to meet, and that's much more important than people who talk generally about these things are saying. But tax reform in general is really one of the most interesting things anybody can be involved in, and to be right in the middle of it has been a real pleasure for me. I've really enjoyed it. I just wish we could get both sides working closer together, because tax reform is not necessarily a plus for either side. Yeah, we believe in less taxes. We believe in less government as Republicans and so forth. But basically, both sides would benefit from a really good tax reform bill. and I intend to see that we get there.
A fan of yours in my office wanted me to ask you this question. It's not about tax reform, but
right.
It's about your future. There was discussion that Mitt Romney might one day run.
Well, I tried to talk him into it, you know.
Are you prepared now just to say what you plan to do in another year, whether you would retire and clear the way for Mitt Romney?
Well, Mitt's not going to run. I thought if I could find somebody who I thought would be as good as I am and as hard-nosed as I am and as willing to fight for the right as I am, I'd be happy to step aside. But I have to say that I intend to run again, and I'm in a position where I think I can help bring this country through. But I'm open to whatever happens. But this is the greatest country in the world. I feel like I've had the greatest privilege in the world to rise from a kid from 42-year-old from Utah to chairman of 3 major committees and have been successful in all 3 committees and also successful in other matters in the United States Senate. That I've been so blessed that I owe this country everything I have. And I've got a big family. We've got 6 kids, 23 grandchildren, 19 great-grandchildren, and Elaine and I, we love this country and we want to do everything we can to help it.
I think that a lot of people would say that you've served the country honorably. One follow-up question.
Sure.
Regarding capital gains, would it make sense to just tax income and remove deductions or taxing capital gains at a lower rate and just tax everything as income?
No question about it. I'd like to get rid of the capital gains rates completely. I'd also like to get rid of the death taxes. I don't see any real value in death taxes. We don't get that much revenue from them. And why would we tax people's estates twice? I mean, we're taxing them when they're making their income, and why would we tax them when the family is left the estate? It just doesn't seem right to me. But we're probably never going to get away from having an estate tax, but I'd sure like it to be a much lower tax. And if we could get that tax rate down, that would stimulate the economy as well. I'd like to use the tax system to stimulate the economy, to give people opportunities and have people realize that there's a future here, that this country is the greatest country in the world. We know what we're doing, and that our tax rates play a pivotal role in helping us to be the greatest country in the world. And it can also play a pivotal role in helping to destroy us if we don't watch it.
You think that bill we see in the fall would actually eliminate capital gains tax and just tax everything as income?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there will always be a capital gains rate, but it doesn't have to be as high as it is. And frankly, I think if we lowered that rate, it would do a lot of good.